Holiness matters to God. You see, in Matthew 23, Jesus is calling the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes and the lawyers, all those people, he's calling them to the carpet. And he's saying things like, you guys are tithing, but you're not being merciful. You guys are washing your hands, but you're not keeping the commandments of God. You guys are putting your own traditions above the law of God. For what? For what purpose? So that you guys can make a buck? So Jesus was calling them all sorts of woes and things like that. And in verse 27, Jesus says what is perhaps his most pointed and powerful statement of this whole chapter. He says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like unto whited sepulchres," that's tombs, "which indeed appear beautiful outward, but within are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness." Now, why is this significant? What was Jesus really telling them? You see, they understood because they had much of the Old Testament memorized. And so they would have thought back to where it says in Numbers 19, verse 16, where God said, look, if you touch a dead man's body, a dead man's bones, you are unclean for a certain amount of time. Because that symbolized coming into contact with sin. And when we come into contact with sin, my friends, we are then contaminated with that sin. And so Jesus was telling them, you guys are unclean, you're full of sin, you're riddled with wickedness, and you need help. Jesus wasn't telling them this stuff to be rude, right? He was telling them because he deeply loved them and desired their salvation. This was the only reason that he had been so forthright and so scathing in his rebukes. But I believe Jesus had tears in his eyes as he was speaking these rebukes. I believe he was weeping as he had to say these things, as he tried one last time to break through their outer hard shell of wickedness. And he told them, you guys are unclean. Now, what was the remedy? Jesus doesn't tell us our condition without providing a remedy. You see, in the Old Testament, hyssop was a symbol of cleansing and forgiveness of sin. Psalms 51:7, David prayed, "Purge me with hyssop, and I will be clean." What was David referring back to? Well, you see, in Exodus chapter 12, verse 22, God commanded the Israelites to take a hyssop plant, dip it in lamb's blood, and put it on their doorpost. And that was to let the angel of death know, everybody in this house, they're covered by the blood, they are safe. My friends, are you a whited sepulcher? Holiness matters to God. Are you full of dead men's bones? Then you need to do something about it. The remedy is in Jesus. The remedy is in his blood. You cannot be saved in any other way. Holiness matters to God.